Well, I'm Noga Levy-Rapoport. I'm a 19-year-old climate activist, student, campaigner, volunteer, and organizer. Over the last 2.5 years, I've spent my time working on and leading campaigns around the UK to bring the climate crisis to the forefront of our national agenda, transforming conversations around the Green New Deal and climate conversations that can bring real solutions to the table, as well as pushing for youth empowerment at all ages. I remember very clearly the first youth climate strike that took place in the UK. It was the first climate demonstration I'd ever attended, and it was the first moment I realised I wanted to be an activist. I turned up to Parliament Square on February 15th, 2019, to see hundreds of young people as terrified and as angry about the climate crisis as I was, chanting and gathering outside the grass in Westminster, where politicians were making decisions that condemned our generation to a lifetime of volatile ecological chaos. But the immediate comradeship I felt with young people around me who I'd never even met before strengthened my focus. And by the end of that day, I'd led 5,000 Londoners out onto the streets outside Westminster, past Downing Street, swarming bridges and roundabouts. And that was my moment where I realized that I had to take part in the change that was happening around me. Something that really brought my perspective forward to understand how crucial intersectionality was to the climate movement was my personal identity. As a queer, non-binary person from a Jewish background, as an immigrant who doesn't have English as their first language, I was able to understand just how marginalized people from all backgrounds would struggle on an even greater level under the climate crisis, and how the way the system works to bring the climate crisis forward, the way climate change works all around us, means that if you are from a more disadvantaged background, you're more likely to suffer under climate change because of the nature of the way we use up our resources, the way capitalism works around us. We require justice for everyone from all ethnic backgrounds, from all minorities, from all marginalized groups in order to bring our communities who are the most vulnerable to the forefront of the conversation around climate change and to strengthen intersectionality within the climate movement. About justice. The climate change movement is about galvanizing and mobilizing as many people as we can to recognize that in extracting as many resources from our planet as possible, we've harmed hundreds and thousands of people around the world. We've harmed livelihoods and communities and homes. And the climate movement is about bringing that back to a just, equitable, fairer, more sustainable future. Yes, very often. I can feel quite pessimistic. It's very difficult to look at the actions of our government leaders. It's difficult to look at the scarce and sparse nature of international climate commitments and not to be pessimistic. But then I organize and then I get involved and then I join climate demonstrations or make them happen myself alongside others. And I feel that optimism again, and I feel that comradeship, and I feel those crowds around me, and I can finally be optimistic again. Because the important message to relay isn't one of constant and ineffable hope, but rather one of action. And the more we act, then the more hope we can have, and the more prepared we are to beat climate change. So often, adults turn to young people and they say, "You're saving the planet, you're saving the world, we're so glad you're doing this. You need to be eco-friendly, you need to be a pure version of an activist, you need to be 100% vegan all the time, you need to take the shortest of showers, you need to make your carbon footprint as small as possible." And it's true that we all need to reduce our waste and the amount we're contributing to fossil fuel economies, but it's also unfair to put that burden solely on young people. Instead, we have to recognize that if we all contribute to the fossil fuel industry, everyone has to act on their fair share of that contribution, and everyone has to reduce their carbon footprint as well as getting involved in the fight for climate justice. I would say that eco-anxiety is terrifying. And very often I talk about the fact that we can turn the emotions we have around climate change, the anger we have, into action. We can change the apathy of those around us into a new movement and mobilize that apathy into real change. But eco-anxiety can be paralyzing and it can be incredibly crippling. It's important to remember that in these difficult and unprecedented times, we have to prioritize ourselves and our own mental health. Don't just give in to the hustle culture and the grind culture of keeping on working, keeping on campaigning, but actually take some time for yourself to recognize that the world collapsing around us is an incredibly difficult thing to face up to. And taking in those moments of regrounding yourself into nature and reconnecting with the earth around us can give you that hope and that boost of energy to keep going when you need to.